Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Running the Gauntlet here in Marvel's Ultimate Alliance 3. Today, we finish out the Phase 2 gauntlets located within the Shadow of Doom DLC expansion. And this one, the level 180 Total Annihilation Gauntlet run, is a little bit of a doozy. It's a little longer than the previous ones we've looked at, with 5 total segments, and a couple of interesting mechanics you need to keep in mind during the actual fights, as well as to get the full clear rewards. But we're going to go over that criteria right now, so make sure you leave a like on the video and don't forget to subscribe for more daily content. The first chapter of this fight is actually going to involve a confrontation eventually against Doctor Strange, and it is in the standard area where Doctor Strange is normally found. The quirk with this fight is one that we've seen before. It is increased attack damage for synergies and only synergies, with an increased EP point recovery for all attacks being sent out. And that means that the team setup that I have, including Thanos Infinite, is less than ideal. But with a couple of well-placed synergy attacks, as soon as we get through the electrical particles coming through this, will get us into the next section after we've destroyed that. You do not have to sit around and destroy that particular hazard. I would recommend that you do at least the first couple of times you come into contact with it, and we'll get into that when we talk about our clear condition reward thresholds in just a few minutes. The next little section here, we're doing something similar where we have this flame hazard that we need to take out that shoots out that ring in all areas in the 360 degree cone that goes out, or a circle that goes out there. You do want to take that down where you can as well. And the last danger room hazard that you need to keep in mind is another one of these electrical ones, and it's up on top of this ledge. Now, I have a bit of a flaw in my team where only 2 of my 4 members can actually make the jump up to this higher section. One of them being Black Panther and the other being Wolverine. You might be able to get Miles Morales up here, but it is going to be a lot more difficult because instead of a double jump, he has his web slinging animation. Thanos Infinite, of course, can make his way up there with relative ease. The problem with that is, for this particular rift, he's not going to be as efficient or as effective because of the lack of his ability to synergize with different team members. But we do throw out a couple of final uppercuts there with Wolverine to take out the large insectoid and get him up right next to this danger room hazard. And then I'm trying to make sure that I've got all of my energy points replenished, and as soon as he goes down, you see that we start running into that problem of getting Miles Morales up to the top there as well. As soon as I switch over to Black Panther, we should be able to get up there. The trouble here is making sure that Wolverine stays on top so we can synergize with him, and then being able to shrug off the electrical effect that staggers us out as a portion of that. And you can now see that Wolverine and Black Panther are both susceptible to that. There are a couple of ISO masteries that you could look into, or even just the standard mastery set, that can help decrease the overall effect of electrical staggering effects. But at the end of the day, we ended up doing what we needed to in order to get through, and that's the last of the danger room hazards in this section of this gauntlet run. From here, you just want to forge right on ahead to the mandatory combat segment that's down off the edge of this cliff, which is going to spawn in an arcane artifact, the 2 standard demon characters that come in even in the standard run, and then there are a couple of additional insectoid enemies that pop in. The large beetle type insectoid that comes in, as well as a couple of the smaller standard flying insectoid creatures. And the nice thing about this is, even though those tend to be more difficult enemies in the vanilla form of the game, we do have quite an easier time taking them on with our enhanced synergy attack stats here. This is the home stretch before the final boss room confrontation, and you really shouldn't be worried for time, as the time constraint on this fight is very liberal and forgiving, where we have a total of 10 minutes to take it out. And we should be able to get that within the next minute or so as we get through to the end here. There's one final portal jump we go through, and this brings us into the boss fight. which is the confrontation against Doctor Strange. Now, contrary to the initial confrontation that you have with Doctor Strange, this iteration is the Dormammu Infused version, so he has enhanced flame attacks along with his things and can be a little bit more devastating to deal with, but you can also make sure that you take him out significantly quicker with the use of your ability and synergies specifically. And as we lay into him with our synergy attacks, you'll see that as he gets down to about the 25% health margin, he actually spawns in a secondary boss, which is Mr. Fantastic. Mr. Fantastic, apart from having the Phoenix Force enhancement, doesn't have anything else special that you need to keep in mind. And with two final synergy attacks there with Miles Morales and Wolverine, we do end up taking out Doctor Strange and can turn our full and undivided attention upon Mr. Fantastic, who can be a little bit of a nuisance with his plasticity and how he tends to zip around the arena, but with a couple of synergy attacks here, we will have him taken down as well. And one more Venom Shock from Miles Morales there is going to do it and get us through this section of the combat, which allows us to transition over to the second leg of this gauntlet, which is a run where we need to take on 3 different bosses. The first boss is going to be Blade, and the quirk with these fights that you can see is that even though Blade is a pretty standard opponent or enemy, there are a couple of alternate costumes of Blade that pop in as secondary characters, many of them with that Phoenix Force enhancement. Now, we go ahead and just lay into Blade with our abilities and synergies here, and that gets him taken down. The grunts will continue to spawn in until the main boss has been defeated, so that is something to keep in mind. These insectoids that are in this next little pathway, they are optional. You don't have to take them on if you don't wish to. If you're looking to meet one of the other clear conditions, which we'll talk about a little bit in the next section, then you can take it a moment and take these guys down as well. But once they're out of the way, we can come into this next section, which has a danger room hazard we need to keep our eyes on with the shield generator that is protecting Deadpool here. And Deadpool is a little bit of a nuisance. It's not showing in this section for whatever reason, but the standard aura that you would see around Deadpool, or should be seeing, is a Curse of the Vampire attribute that will heal his allies or your opponents as you are laying into them. And we go ahead and lay out our extreme attacks to help heal up our team a little bit, and that tends to do okay. But as you can see here, it's identical to the Blade fight, where these other grunts that are around they just keep spawning in until you are able to defeat the main boss character here. And Deadpool is a little bit annoying because he teleports around a little bit, but other than that, once you can get kind of a read on where he is or what's going on, you can get him taken down fairly easily. From here, the final gate is going to open up, and that is going to bring us into the third and final boss of this run in particular, which, as you'll see here, it is going to be Moon Knight. And the same deal happens here, where we have some alternate skins of Moon Knight that pop in as some other grunt characters that we face off against. This final area actually has 2 danger room hazards, which one is the gravity orb that draws your team members in, and then punches out with a couple of serrated blades that will deal damage to your team. So you want to take that one out as quickly as you can. The other one is another hazard that bounces around the large gyrosphere, so you could probably deal with that one for an extended period of time if you needed to, but because of the clear condition we're going to touch on in just a minute here, you do want to take those out. The only other thing you need to be aware of with Moon Knight is he does have that curse attribute where he will deal a portion of any physical attacks back to you as direct damage, so do keep that in mind. The third section here is going to be a confrontation against some outriders mainly, though there are a couple of the insectoids that spawn in as well as a couple of mini bosses. Particularly, you'll see Thing and Invisible Woman pop up here eventually. But because the main objective is defeating 200 enemies, and it does not include the caveat of including bosses, you just need to get up to that total as quickly as you can. So I'm back into my standard rhythm of rinsing and repeating the ability swaps of Thanos, where I first draw the opponents in, and then freeze them in place with his secondary ability there, which tends to work pretty well in this type of an environment. And you're starting to see some of the insectoids spawning in as well. But this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk a little bit about the clear conditions, because this is going to be some mindless combat as we continue to progress through here. The first clear condition, of course, is clearing through the gauntlet once. That is going to involve getting through all 5 segments of the gauntlet, which we are analyzing in today's video, just that one time. And as we've mentioned before, doing so will allow you to run the gauntlet looped or repetitively as needed or desired. The second clear condition is going to be destroying 10 or more hazard devices, and in any one run of the 5 segments of the gauntlet, you are going to have the opportunity to take down 6 hazard devices. So you're going to need to run this gauntlet at least twice, providing that you are focusing on the hazard devices that crop in. And those are the 3 that we saw in the first section and the 3 that we saw in the second section. There are no other hazards that pop up in the final 3 sections of this gauntlet run. The third clear condition is going to be defeating a total of 1,000 enemies. And that sounds like a little bit of a daunting task, especially where you see that I'm ignoring a lot of the enemies unless they are absolutely necessary. But even using that tactic, you can get that 1,000 enemy requirement in 2 runs of this gauntlet, especially because this segment really helps bolster those numbers. And there are a few others that we'll see a little bit later that also have high body counts when it comes to enemies defeated. You're now seeing that Thing has popped in. I'm going to detour away from the clear conditions for just a moment here to discuss the fact that Thing does have the aura that causes him to explode once you have defeated him outright. So be wary of that as you seek to take him on, because you don't want to be near to him when he detonates and goes down for the count. With that being discussed, the last thing that we need to talk about is defeating 30 bosses. This is really the only room where you may not be able to get all of the bosses that you are anticipating, because again, it's the clear condition of defeating 200 enemies, not including the bosses that pop in. But even at that, the maximum amount that you're going to get out of this is going to be 2 because of Invisible Woman that spawns in here in a minute. In this run, you do see that I take her out, but you can indeed take her, clear through this leg of the gauntlet without taking her down. So just be wary of that if you're going for getting as many boss characters as you can or need to. To get that 30 boss character defeated in order to fill out that last clear condition, my best advice is going to be run the gauntlet twice and then run the first 2 sections once more, and that should get you up to that 30 boss character threshold, even if you miss Invisible Woman twice in this section in the previous runs that you do for it. As another side note here as we go wrapping up this segment, running these gauntlets on a loop actually really helps with collecting the experience spheres, or the experience cubes, that allow you to bolster up the members of your roster. And I do plan on running these pretty repetitively to make sure that I can get the rest of my team members, or the rest of my characters I've unlocked, up to the maximum 300 level. But we'll probably cover that in a different video as well. Here's the 4th section of this gauntlet we need to go through. This one is a little bit heavy in terms of the body count as well, where we will be defeating 40 enemies, including 3 bosses. And you notice that there is the distinction between this section and the previous one. This first boss that pops in right off the bat is Spider-Gwen. She goes down very quickly with the use of our extreme attacks stacked up on top of each other. Another thing you need to be wary of in this section is the majority of the enemies that you will be confronting are these large insectoids, but even as you go taking out those insectoids, you will be working towards that clear condition of the 40 enemies defeated. You will also notice periodically that there is a banner that flashes across the top of the screen that indicates that damage is increasing on both sides of the fight, and that will really help speed things along as we seek to take out these opponents, because these insectoids, they can be a little bit daunting, but once you've got a rhythm figured out, they go down pretty easy. And as a reminder, they do take slightly more damage when you hit them in their back tail stinger areas. That's not something they actively dole an attack out with. You'll see here as we get to about the midpoint section that we're going to have another opponent spawn in. That is going to be Miles Morales, and he has the same attributes that you see when you first confront him in the story quest together with Spider-Gwen and Miss Marvel Kamala Khan. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, after taking down one more of these opponents, we should see him spawning in. So let's go ahead and get our ability taken care of there, run back and get a heavy attack or a ground pound, and there you see that Miles Morales does indeed spawn in. He has his of the Phoenix Force enhancement as well, and with a couple of our extreme attacks, we have him taken down almost immediately as well. And we actually managed to take out a couple more of those insectoids with the deployment of those extreme attacks. Only a few more left to go, and we are past the halfway point. We've now had at least 2 damage enhancements to our fight, and at this point where we get to 25 enemies defeated, you see that the third mini-boss comes together in the form of Spider-Man. And he can get you stuck on the walls of the arena, so do keep that in mind as you lay into him and are seeking to take him out. At this stage, he should go down pretty easy because you will have access to a couple of damage output increases as you've been confronting him. And I do continue to lay into him primarily with those heavy attacks by Thanos Infinite here, but I will eventually transition over to using some synergy attacks just to make sure that we can take him out that much quicker. And just like that, you see that we go in with a couple of the synergies from Wolverine, from Black Panther, and from Miles Morales there. So one final set of heavy attacks into Spider-Man will have him taken down, and then we just need to take out the remaining 7 of these large insectoids that come through, and that should be made even easier at this point because we do have the damage increase that just came through as that next minute had passed. And at this stage, I'm really resorting to using a couple of the dash attacks with Thanos Infinite, as well as his heavy attacks, as they are a great source of damage output. And here we are taking out the last 3. I will transition over to using that dash attack here again in a moment, as that is going to be the most efficient way to get around these opponents here. This is the second to last one, and then our final opponent that we're taking on is over here in the corner, which we managed to do with that dash attack, and see that he crimps over and clips through the stage a little bit. But that's fine, as they're very big insectoids. The 5th and final section of this Gauntlet run involves another 3-way confrontation with some bosses. Though they do not spawn in at the same time with some of the previous sections that we've seen, we do need to take them on. The first boss that spawns in is Ronan, and he also is accompanied by a couple of the Kree soldiers, both of the Mighty and Grunt varieties. Now, Ronan is pretty straightforward. He has about the same amount of abilities that he has when you first encounter him, but as you continue to get a read on his patterns, you'll be able to take him out with little to no problem. Just like that, you see we have him staggered out. And I did have a couple members of my team that had ran over to focus on the grunt enemies there, but we will be able to finalize our fight here with Ronan with a few more of our synergy attacks. And you'll see right here with the final deployment of our adamantium uppercut there with Wolverine, that spawns in the second section. This is where things get a little bit different because we do have 2 additional bosses that spawn in. We have Thanos as well as Annihilus. And Thanos does not have anything too particular you need to be concerned about, though one thing you do want to be wary of is the fact of what's happening right now with my extreme attack detonation. You just watched Thanos' health go all the way down to 0 from one single deployment of his extreme attack, and I'll tell you why. These different crystals around the outside have the unique attribute of reversing heal effects, which is kind of nice, especially with Annihilus, as his vanilla form does have the ability to regen up periodically throughout the fight. The problem with that is it is a net reversal. It is not only applicable to your opponents. So that's why you saw that Thanos Infinite went all the way down to 0 health as that was deployed. And at this point, I'm panicking a little bit. Not because I'm not concerned that I can't clear it out, but because Thanos is very much a heavy-hitting character, and I want to get him back on his feet as quickly as possible, and then I will leave my teammates to getting the other teammate down, that being Black Panther, back on his feet as quickly as possible. We're not doing great on time, but now that we have our teammates healed up, we should be able to take care of things a little bit easier. And there are two different sections of this fight that are based around Annihilus's health specifically, but with those extreme attacks you saw us detonate earlier before my caution warning, we were able to take them out, or take him down to that section. And now it's just a matter of finishing out these opponents. We will lay into him with a couple more of our abilities here from Thanos Infinite specifically. And the other thing to be cautious of is, yes, Thanos does have the ability to inverse one's controls and confusion as you are seeking to get these clears. And with a couple more of our abilities here, we should have Thanos taken down, as he is going down a little bit quicker than Annihilus. I honestly think he's just a little more susceptible to damage, all things considered. And with our abilities here, we'll be able to finish him out. And I am now employing a couple of the attacks, or the heavy attacks, from our Thanos Infinite. And with one more detonation there targeted at Thanos over there, we have him taken down. And now we just need to focus on Annihilus. Annihilus, he doesn't appear to regen up, though I haven't been watching that closely, to be honest. You do want to watch out for his large area of effect type attacks, as he has some conical attacks out in front, as well as those large spherical detonations around him as well. He will periodically retreat from the battlefield and then swoop back down around it, but at this stage, we're just looking to take him out as quickly as we can, and we have managed that with a few final synergy attacks there. But that is going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it or found it helpful and instructional, please feel free to leave me a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more daily content, as I have videos coming your way every single day. We will break into the Phase 3 Gauntlet runs next week, starting Monday. So make sure you check back for that one as well. Thanks so much for your time, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.